Welcome back to the Kelly Roach Show. I am super pumped to have with me here today, Dr. Josh Axe. Hello, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here.
Hey, Kelly, thanks so much for having me.
You are going to help change some lives today. You are a doctor by trade, but you talk a lot about how the mind is really the source of the medicine, right? You, of course, help people with their bodies and their minds, but I know that a lot of work that you do is helping people understand the way that they think and show up in the world. And you have a really powerful story that kind of sprung you into the trajectory. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your story from when you were bedridden and had to heal yourself through this process, and then a little bit about like what you've been doing and where you are in the world today with your business and all of those things.
Yeah, well, again, Kelly, it's an honor to be on. And I know that you've got a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders and people that are interested in success. And so excited to share some of those principles as well. You know, I founded a company called Ancient Nutrition that does well, and would love to share some of those principles too. But yeah, I spent most of my career teaching people how to use food as medicine. And I came to an epiphany years ago that really mindset medicine is the biggest thing that people are missing, both for their health, but also for just even having great relationships or succeeding in their businesses. And so our mindset and our perception and what we believe about things is critically important. And I set off to write this book called Think This, Not That. But when I was, the week I was going to start writing it, I had something crazy and unexpected happened. In fact, I almost died. And I'm not saying that in terms of like close to, I'm thinking about very, very close to dying. And it was a long process of healing, but I had injured my back lifting weights. This was many years ago, and I went and got stem cell done one time, and it helped tremendously. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get this done one more time again. And I was in great shape. I just had a little bit of pain when I was flying and traveling some. So I went and got stem cell again. They go, what stem cell is they take your own bone marrow. They will take that and inject it into an area, and it helps fully heal the area. Well, I did this again in my disc and my low back, but something didn't go right. I felt worse and worse and worse for 3 months. Finally, one morning I woke up and I couldn't walk, and the pain was just excruciating. I had to have my family and I lived between Nashville, Tennessee and Puerto Rico. And I was in Puerto Rico at the time, had to have an ambulance come pick me up, brought me to a hospital, did an MRI, got the report back that I had an infection in my spine. Not only was it in my disc, it was in my bone called osteomyelitis. There was also an abscess by my spinal cord. And I had to take a private medical flight from Puerto Rico to Florida. Met with an infectious disease doctor who sat me down and he said, Josh, listen, here's the reality. Best case scenario, you're going to be in pain the rest of your life. And you'll be the first person to know when bad weather comes through. He said, the worst case scenario is this could kill you, and there's a real good likelihood you're going to be permanently disabled from this. He said the infection is spread, throughout the entire bone, the spinal cord. It's by the spinal cord, and you may have to have it going cleaned up and put metal rods put in your spine, and it's a really. And for me, Kelly, I went from being like throwing my 2-year-old daughter up in the air in the pool, cycling, swimming, squatting, deadlifting heavy weight, like in really, really great shape. I just turned 40 years old, to hearing that I might be permanently disabled. And I, for about 48 hours, just felt terrible. I mean, there were emotions I'd never experienced before. I never felt hopelessness or despair before, and I felt that. And so I just had to then realize after 48 hours of feeling that feeling like a victim is not serving me. I have to then go and focus on healing and focus on the best possible outcome. That's what will serve me. I also am a person of faith, and I believe that God is for me, not against me, and that all things will work out for my good, and that God was bigger than my condition. And so I started visualizing and focusing on myself completely healed and whole again, of myself throwing my, kids up in the pool again and doing all the activities I wanted to do. And the doctor also told me, you're going to need to be on antibiotics possibly for 12 weeks, so 3 months, 6 weeks IV every day, and then an oral. And I knew health, and I knew being on an antibiotic for 3 months without doing my gut health.
It'll destroy you. Yeah.
So I went and did my own research on how to do this naturally. And I came across a study where you could cut antibiotic time down to just 4 weeks if you do hyperbaric chamber with it. So I did that. I got in a hyperbaric chamber every day for a month. I did vitamin IVs with silver and ozone and methylene blue. I only ate meat and vegetables. I prayed every day. I did everything I could while doing this IV antibiotic for 4 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I started feeling better and a little better and a little better. Now, I will say this, it took me 10 months before I could walk again. And after that, it was 2 months on a walker. So I didn't walk on my own unassisted for a full year. And I could only crawl or lay in bed, and I would crawl out and get into a pool after a couple months for rehab, and was able to start doing that. But it was a full year. Now, I will say this time last year that we're recording this was my first week back walking again on my own. And so it's been 1 year, and I'm happy to say now, I'm not 100%, but I'm probably 85%. I'm weightlifting again. I can carry my daughter. I should be back to 100% by the end of this year. I'm already much better than the best that the doctor told me, the infectious disease specialist, that I would get back to. All that being said, I wrote this book through this process. And I think it's by far the best book I've ever written, because I had time to really reflect on what are the most important principles that cause us to be successful in life. And I put those in the book.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. It's so powerful. And yeah, I think that you mentioned a couple of things though, because you mentioned like the combination of prayer, natural remedies, healing, keeping hope, developing your thought process. So there's a lot of elements of how you were able to work through this and how you were able to overcome this, right? And so I think that there's a lot of silos of information and education and books on each of these things. But what you're talking about is bringing your years of being a doctor to the world of mindset and prayer and natural healing, and really how can people achieve happiness and health in their life, bringing all of these things together, which is really special.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And this is the same way I practice medicine. Is a lot of times people think, well, there's going to be a pill that's going to fix me, whether it's a medication or supplement. Typically, no, it's not a pill, it's a protocol. It's following a holistic plan in order to get well.
Mm-hmm. So just to give everyone a little bit of scope and frame of reference, and then I want to talk about the book, obviously, but to give everybody a little bit of a frame of reference, can you just talk a little bit about like the trajectory of your career from practicing medicine? Now, obviously, you're a world acclaimed, speaker and author, and you're doing so much beyond medicine. But like, just give everyone a little bit of that trajectory, and then let's talk a little bit about the book.
Yeah. So what got me into the functional medicine area in the first place was my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And I saw my mom go through all the traditional treatments, and it really broke my heart. And I wanted to help people heal naturally. So that led me to become a doctor of natural medicine, also a chiropractor, and also a certified nutrition specialist. And I then opened a functional medicine clinic in Nashville, Tennessee. That grew to be probably, one of the most successful clinics in the state. We were doing $1 million after our first year in practice. And again, the focus there was healing people, but also, again, profitability can come with that. And then I started a website called drax.com. And that grew to be the most visited natural health website in the entire world. And then I founded a company called Ancient Nutrition with a business partner of mine, Jordan Rubin. And that grew to be over a $200 million a year company over the past, really, I think we founded about 7 years ago. And then I also founded a website called leaders.com. And I invest a lot into small companies and helping them grow. So that's kind of where I'm at in my career. I also love I have my own, I have a show called the Dr. Josh Axe Show, where I teach a lot of personal growth and mindset principles and health principles there as well. But that's sort of, I guess, some of the trajectory.
Yeah. Well, I love you sharing that, because everyone listening to this show is a builder. They're all building companies. They're all leading teams. They're all managing really busy lives. And, obviously these principles have served you in building massively successful organizations, but also when it came time that you had your own health crisis, you've been able to lead yourself through that process, right? So I think one of the really difficult things today for people is there's kind of like this juxtaposition that's going on where people are recognizing that they're not getting the best or correct medical advice from traditional, practices in the system. There's also so much information available online and out in the world that it can be very overwhelming and hard to decide what to focus on and what is real and what is actually going to make the biggest difference. So knowing that you're speaking to busy entrepreneurs, what would be some powerful things that you would tell them to both think about and do from a health and mindset perspective that you think can make the biggest difference for them?
So one thing is overcoming your limiting beliefs. This is incredibly important for business, for relationships, for your own physical health. Let me share an example of this. And everyone I think that's listening to this right now, they're going to really resonate because they've had this happen in their life, I almost guarantee you. When I was a freshman in high school, I was not a very good student. And I had a teacher, my English teacher, her name was Miss Noble. She asked me to stay after class one day. And she said to me, Josh, what do you want to do after high school? And I said, I want to be a doctor. And the reason I said that was the year prior, my mom had just gone through chemo and I wanted to help people like my mom. And she actually laughed out loud at me. I don't think she knew anything about my mom, but she laughed out loud and she said, listen, Josh, with your GPA, you'd never get into med school. She said, my own daughter has a 3.8 GPA. She barely got into med school. She said, with your GPA, you'll be lucky to finish high school. She said, I wanted you to stay after class because you got an F on this paper, your midterm, and you are getting a D- in my class. She said, you need to try harder. And I walked out of there, Kelly, just really, the one thing I took away as a 14-year-old kid, I thought, well, gosh, now I can't be a doctor. Then 2 weeks later, my mom brings me to see a family doctor that then diagnoses me with ADHD, talks about me like I'm not in the room and says, your son has a learning disability. Mm-hmm. And then I thought to myself, well, gosh, not only can I not be a doctor, I'm like medically not smart. There's something wrong with me. Yeah. So then in high school, I just really stopped trying. And I barely graduated high school. The only reason I graduated is I knew my dad would just be furious with me if I didn't graduate. So I graduated high school with a C- GPA.
Okay.
And I applied to a lot of colleges. Most of them denied me getting in, the ones I wanted to go to. But I did have one college I wanted to go to that sent a letter back. And here's what it said, essentially. You're not in, but if you come and take summer school and average above a 3.0, we'll let you in. And I thought, okay, this is my chance. So I went, it was University of Kentucky. I went and I took summer class. And the first class I had to take was English 101. And my first big assignment was a paper. And so I went, I really tried on this paper, handed it in, felt good. And then a few days later, the teacher, her name was Miss Williams, she said, Josh, can you stay after class? And my stomach sunk. I thought, oh no, not this again. And she says to me, she says, Josh, what's your major? And I said, well, I haven't chosen one. And she said, well, I want to let you know that I think you should consider being an English major or journalism major. She said, because you're a really talented writer. She said, you got the highest grade on this class paper in the entire class. And I can tell you're really gifted at this. Great job. And for me, Kelly, it was a total, I'll call it like a mindset transplant. Yeah. I mean, it's like I had a diseased organ and replaced it with a new one. I mean, I went from thinking I'm stupid, there's something wrong, I'm not a good learner, I'm not good at school, all these things, to thinking, you know what, I can do this. Yeah. And then by the end of the year, I changed my major to pre-med, eventually went and became a doctor. I graduated Johns Hopkins with a 3.9 GPA. Yeah. And then again, started companies, written books, all those things. But here's the crazy part. I don't think any of that would have happened, any of those successes, if I would have held on to that limiting belief that I wasn't smart. And I think there's a lot of people out there today, could be entrepreneurs, who think, well, you know what, I'm not innovative like Elon Musk, or I'm not really wealthy, or, I didn't have a trust fund, so I couldn't do this, or, hey, the economy's hard, so there's all these limiting beliefs. And I saw this with patients. You know how many patients I had come in that tell me things like, well, my doctor told me I'd have to be on this drug the rest of my life, or they told me my condition was irreversible. And 90+% of the time, those things are lies. They're just not true. And so what you should believe is what's going to lead to the best outcome. For instance, you should try and believe what Warren Buffett believes when it comes to finances. What you believe doesn't matter. Yeah. What I believe doesn't matter. What matters is, and here's another principle, only listen to and follow, in terms of who you're following, the top 1% of the top 1%. Yeah. Again, the Warren Buffetts, the Kathy Woods, the Peter Thiels, the Ray Dalios, like those are the people you listen to and you follow. All the other stuff is just noise. And so it's a really, really, and it's true with medicine. There's so many health influencers saying, this red meat will kill you, or it's the only cure for this, or whatever. I mean, all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
out there, but it's like, what are the top 1% doctors that are helping people reverse hypothyroid or autoimmune disease or
Yeah.
cancer? What do they say? Well, that's who you should listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so good. And what's really coming up for me from that story that you shared is like, what outdated labels are you still carrying around everywhere you go? Right. Because to your point, you were a completely different person as that kid who wasn't really applying himself, that wasn't really like, sure what you wanted or, whatever the case. And that teacher had that talk with you and you could have carried that, right? And that would complete your whole life would have gone in a different direction if you carried an outdated label. But I think for so many entrepreneurs, like they'll accept a label for themselves about their capability or their potentiality when if they really looked at the reality of the effort that they put forth in a scenario and were really brutally honest with themselves, full effort may not have been totally there, or maybe full understanding wasn't totally there.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's more to the story. So I think, from that story that you told, just like reminding people to check the labels that you're giving yourself and ask if it's helpful or hurtful. Right. And, to your point, like it's the whole trajectory of your life that's being impacted by that. And I love the point that you gave about who to follow, because like your head will spin trying to figure out what to do that is healthy and right today. And I think your point specifically about not just like listen to the 1% of the 1%, but it's even beyond that of people that are helping to reverse this particular disease, or they're helping people to heal naturally or whatever the case, because there's a difference between information and someone that's helping people to get a really specific result in a specific way.
People need to be able to decipher, and this is what wisdom is in part, is deciphering between propaganda and principles. Principles are do not change. Okay, there are principles of financial investing. There are principles of entrepreneurship and leadership, and you've got to follow principles and not listen to propaganda. The other thing is mindsets come from memories. There are memories at some point in your life. It could be a coach, pastor, teacher, parent, that at some point in your life said something to you, and then you embraced it as being true for yourself. And if it was a lie, that's not serving you. So what you really want to do to overcome limiting beliefs is write down, what are your top 3 limiting beliefs? Write out very specifically, write down the memory. Okay. When did it start?
Yes.
It's called the ABCDE technique. A is activate the memory. B is write down what is the exact belief you have. C is write down the consequences if you continue to live out that belief. D is dispute it if it's a lie. Dispute why that's not true. Write down all the reasons why it's not. And then E is exchange it for the actual truth of what you need to believe in order to break through. And if people can follow that formula, here's the thing. A lot of people are one limiting belief away from experiencing a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And most of the time that's the biggest roadblock.
No, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. I love that. I want to ask you about like mental, physical health connection for business leaders and entrepreneurs, especially because a lot of business leaders are under extreme levels of stress. There's a lot of pressure, anxiety, mental health, things that coincide with that. From a health standpoint, knowing what you know, working through what you worked through, not just your work as a doctor, your work that you had to do on yourself, healing through this process, what would be some of the advice that you would give for people leading companies, managing teams? They're under a lot of stress. There's a huge amount of entrepreneurs that I see personally every single day that their business problems are actually not business problems. Right? When there's health, anxiety, marital issues, like there's a lot that's behind what is manifesting as a business problem, right?
Yeah. So to prove your point here, let me give you part of the cure and part of the framing this up. According to a study, this was an article I read years ago in Harvard Business Review, and they wanted to see why most executives were fired. Okay. CEOs specifically. 40% of CEOs were fired for moral failures. 35% were fired for poor performance. More CEOs are fired for moral failures than poor performance. Isn't that crazy? And that
great.
just shows that character is even more important than
Yes.
competence in terms of your skill.
Yeah.
And this goes back to, and I think maybe this would be helpful for people sharing and thinking about this from a big picture perspective. About 7 years ago, I was at my grandfather's funeral, and I had an amazing grandfather. He lived to be 96 years old, worked up until the day of his life, was an entrepreneur. At 40, he went and he was in World War II, served in the Navy. When he finished with the Navy, went and worked for a telephone company, working a 9-to-5 job he didn't like. Finally, at 44 years old, he said, I don't want to do this anymore. Him and my grandmother took their life savings, bought a lake. They built a campground and turned it into a swim park in Ohio. Today, it's still operating. It's called Winona
That's
Lake.
insane. I love
Yeah.
it.
And so, he operated it until he was for 52 years, till he was 96 years old. And I was at his funeral, and we were at the part that they don't always do this at funerals, but the pastor got to a point where he said, hey, does anyone have any final words that they would like to express here about Howard? Mm-hmm. And the man next to me, just with a split second later, like yelled out just between sobs, Howard was my best friend. And at first, I'm a little ashamed to say this. My first thought was, well, I know who you are. I don't think you're my grandfather's best friend. That's my Uncle Don and Uncle Alan and whatever. But then I realized, I realized something. I realized, you know what? I'm sure my grandfather was your best friend, because there's probably 150 to 200 people in this room, and everybody probably feels, or at least half the people probably feel like my grandfather was my best friend. And then people started sharing, Howard saved my marriage. Howard led me to God. Howard was the father I never had. I mean, it was amazing. And it really made me reflect and think about what is success. Mm-hmm. Because nobody said he was on Forbes cover magazine, he had 100,000 followers on Instagram. I mean, none of that. And one of the epiphanies I had was success is not defined by what I accomplish, but who I become. Mm-hmm. And so it really helped change my mind. You know, I remember reading stories, like I was a big Lance Armstrong fan. I was a triathlete in college, and I was a huge fan of his. And he was raising all this money for breast cancer, which my mom had. And I remember feeling so betrayed when he got caught for doping. And I remember in his interview, he said something, my mindset is win at all costs. And it reminded me of a Bible verse as well. And it's, what good is gaining the world if you lose your soul? Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs is another example of this. At the end of his life, he told his biographer who wrote about him, he said, I just wish my kids understood what pretty much he regretted, and he expressed that he neglected his kids and his family in order to focus on his company. Mm. And listen, Apple's an amazing company. I'm recording right now. I'm using Apple, a lot of Apple devices. But all that being said, what good is gaining the world and losing your soul? What good is gaining all the world's wealth but losing your health? Yeah. So I think that it's important for entrepreneurs to put first things first, to have the proper perspective, and to focus primarily on becoming and not accomplishing. I mean, we all have a to-do list. If you're an entrepreneur, I mean, you have things you got to get done. But before that, you should have a to-be list. Like if you're going to go and lead a team meeting, there's a big difference between lead a team meeting and getting it done and doing it fast, and doing it promoting wisdom and leadership and compassion and empathy and all of those other qualities. And that's the big thing that most leaders aren't doing well enough and entrepreneurs aren't doing well enough, is focusing on character. If entrepreneurs want to be successful, here's how they do it. The number one thing they need to grow in is character. You're more loving, more compassionate, more encouraging, more inspiring. You're living out that sort of life. And then you're taking your unique gifts and skills that only you have, and you're taking those to the highest level possible. Yeah. And then here's the third component. You're helping everyone around you do the same. You're helping them grow in their character and their unique skill and gift set. You're discipling them, mentoring them, and acting as the leader for them. And if you can really focus on that, your business is just going to absolutely thrive.
Yeah. I'm going to hurt my neck because I'm shaking my head so hard. I love this so much, and I appreciate you putting it through that context for people. I think we talk on the show a lot about like leadership and mentoring others, and just the power of that relationship that you're building with someone. And I think it's very hard for entrepreneurs in the world that we live in today, especially in the online space, to slow down and focus on the value of what's happening inside. which is what you're referencing about who you're becoming, but also the inside is what no one in the public sees. It is how you interact with the team. It is how you make courageous decisions. It is how you empower and bless other people. It is on how you like pour into others, right? And I think there's so much pressure on the outside that a lot of people don't feel the joy, the reward of those things that you're describing, which are inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. And these are things in my book I really cover in depth. If people are saying, you know what, I want to grow in my purpose, my identity as a leader. Yes. Again, this is something I really dive deep in.
Yeah. Let's just pause for 1 second. Let's give them the link to the book. Where's the best place for people to go to get it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say go to Amazon.com. If you go to Amazon and just search Josh Axe, Think This, Not That. So I used to teach people how to eat this, not that. Yeah. Now a big part of me is teaching people to think this, not that. And it was a New York Times bestseller the first week out. Yeah. And we've gotten rave reviews about it in terms of just being a great book for personal growth and leadership. So I'm excited for everybody to check it out.
I'm so happy. And I mean, you guys hear just the power and the depth of this conversation. So definitely go grab a copy on Amazon, and we'll put the link below, of course, and we'll link it in anywhere we're promoting this on social media as well. But no, it's your perspective is just so rich. And I think it's such a powerful pause for people. And I think that's what this book is going to do for people, is allow them to pause and to really reflect and reset around the construct of their life and what they're pursuing and why. Right. And I think that gets lost a lot of times. So I do want to take at least a couple minutes on the health side of things.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're the guy and I have you here and I have entrepreneurs here, that it is many times a struggle to prioritize taking care of themselves at the level that we really need to, that our bodies and our minds need in order to perform at an optimal level. And obviously there are 1,000 things that you can do and that you probably should do to optimize your health. But what, in your perspective, when you're working with your students, your clients, your patients, what are the 3 to 5 essential things that you would say to an entrepreneur to focus on first as their foundation of optimal health as a stepping stone?
Well, before I hit on the 3 to 5 exactly, the first thing I want to mention is you should be time boxing and having a very specific schedule that you follow and that you don't bleed into other things. Yeah. That's actually, of all the things I could get, that's the biggest problem that entrepreneurs have. There's a study done, and time boxing was shown to be, of 100 different productivity techniques, the most effective of all of them. And so time boxing is where you structure out your day and you say, okay, from 6 a.m. to 6:30, I'm working on personal growth and spiritual growth. From 6:30 to 7, I'm working on health. And then and so you're just boxing out your day. Yeah. And so you need to schedule time for spiritual growth. You need to schedule time for your health. You need to schedule time for your family, and just do it then. Yeah. You need to, when you are working, you need to be in your zone doing deep work where you're just focused on that thing and not going between email and calls and the water cooler and all of that. So that's the first thing. Now, in terms of the health principles, one thing that more entrepreneurs need to do is take mini breaks and go on a walk. This is so beneficial for health, so beneficial. In fact, there's studies done on longevity. Walking was one of the things in the study that increase your lifespan the most. So when you wake up in the morning, go on a quick 15-minute walk. Yeah. Taking deep breaths, getting outside, it helps reset your hormones. Maybe say everything you're grateful for, pray. But do something like that. Go on a walk in the morning around lunch. You need to actually take a lunch break. Some entrepreneurs just keep working through lunch. Take a lunch break, eat for 30 minutes, then go on a 20-minute walk. And then similar thing, when you get home, don't just start work again. By the way, I made myself sick. I know this. My first year of practice, I developed gut issues, a condition called leaky gut, had these digestive issues, a number of things, because I was working 60 hours a week. And it's like I would work, I'd be on my computer while I was eating lunch. And then at night, I would maybe eat for a little bit, but then I was on my laptop even while I watched a show working. And it's just, you're on too much. It's like your body isn't able to fully recharge. And so you have to block out time where you're doing nothing. You might feel guilty, like you're not getting ahead or achieving. You have to have those principles of rest. There's a great book called what is it called now? I'm trying to remember. Jim Lohr and the Powerful Engagement. And basically it goes through everything from taking a short nap over lunch for 20 minutes to going on a walk to just taking those breaks. You are way more productive statistically.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, is take walks in those breaks. The second thing is eat real food. Eat real food. Now, listen, if you're listening to this, even if you just changed your breakfast, that's 1/3 of your diet. That alone is a massive change. And I found when people change their breakfast, oftentimes lunch and dinner become even easier. So do a superfood smoothie for breakfast, a cup of berries, a cup of coconut milk, and protein. Do a bone broth protein and maybe a plant protein. Do 1 scoop of each. Get more most people are not getting enough protein.
Yeah.
So do that for breakfast and try and eat more fruit, more vegetables, and more organic meat. Those are the biggest things people are missing: organic meat, fruits, and vegetables. And then I would say you don't need to exercise every day, but every other day. Weight training is probably the thing people need the most. 1 day of doing some intense cardio doesn't need to be every day. Literally just 1 day a week is what the studies show will get you to where you need to be. So walking, weight training, 3 days a week, and then just doing a little, maybe 1 day of cardio total even would be great for your health. And then focusing on spiritual growth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of identity issues, a lot of mindset issues. I do a spiritual triathlon in the morning. I go outside and walk and I say everything I'm grateful for. I get back inside, I make my superfood smoothie, then I sit down and then I read my Bible. And then I will spend a little time in prayer. And then I'll connect with my family. And then I'll go to work. And so block out time for that spiritual growth. And then last thing I would say is take some supplements. I mean, most people are missing something. The studies show that almost everyone is not in their ideal range of vitamin D. So if you're not getting sunshine that day, outside of the summer months, you typically don't need it, but fall, winter, and spring, almost everybody should be taking 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. The other nutrients we're most deficient in are magnesium, B complex vitamins, and then women and iron, and men and zinc. Okay. And so iron is responsible for women and supporting hormones and blood. And for men, zinc is really important for testosterone levels. And there's a low testosterone epidemic for men and a thyroid epidemic for women. So take some supplements. For women, ashwagandha is a great herb to reduce stress and good for testosterone and estrogen for both men and women. That's a good one. For women, Don Quai. For men, doing, I would say something like, I don't know, like a ginseng would be good too. And then last thing, most people could do a probiotic and a greens powder and a multi. I know that's quite a few things, but generally I would say, just in a nutshell, the most important would be a multivitamin, greens powder, a probiotic, and omega-3 and vitamin D. And if you're getting those 5 supplements, plus doing the other things, I mean, you'll see a radical improvement in your health across the board.
Yeah. That's perfect. So, I mean, for everyone listening, you can just rewind, get your notes ready. He just gave you the blueprint. I love it. It's a great starting point. And I know you have other books that people can read, and I'm sure they can come listen to the show. They can come follow you on social media. They can come hear you speak, and they can soak in both the mindset and the health at the same time while they do it. But this was absolutely phenomenal. And thank you for sharing your story, the powerful stories about your grandfather, about your healing journey, about your career trajectory. And just thanks for taking the time to be here and empower other entrepreneurs to let go of the limiting beliefs. Let's give them the name of the book, and we're going to go right over to Amazon, guys, to grab your copy. Think This, Not That.
Yep. Yeah. The book is called Think This, Not That. And also I wanted to mention, if people want to learn more about the topics I cover, maybe you want to learn more about low testosterone or hypothyroidism, you could go to Amazon and search Dr. Axe hypothyroid, or just go to my show, the Dr. Josh Axe Show, to learn more. And I also post a lot on social media. My handle is just at Dr. Josh Axe. But Kelly, thanks so much for having me on. It was such an honor to be on today. Thanks for the great questions. And this was a lot of fun. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And for everybody listening, we're going to put a series of links down below, including not just Dr. Axe's books, but also his website that you can go to, that actually is the leading website in the world for health and nutrition information, so that you can get the real deal and actually get yourself on the right track. So thank you so much for being here. It was an honor to have you on the show. And for everyone listening, sharing is caring. Pass this along to another entrepreneur that needs to break through the limiting beliefs, prioritize their health so they can make their dreams come true. Thanks for being here, everybody.